Welcome to Status Update, the social media and creator podcast that you can listen to whilst you're working, because this is a work podcast. I'm Stevie Johnson, MD of Disrupt and ex-television personality. As always today, I am joined by my friend, colleague, and the voice of Gen Z, Jake Crabb.
Hi, I'm Jake. You probably don't know me yet, but hopefully in time you will.
And in this episode, we cover...
So we're doing things a little bit differently today. We've got Stevie Johnson in the hot seat.
In all honesty, when I left the show, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. There wasn't a job lined up.
It was real then. And when it became real, it was like, shit, like we need to smash this.
AI is going to be the biggest change to our society since the smartphone.
Inevitably, it moved on without you. Did you feel lost?
Oh my gosh, that is a tough question. If anyone says to you they're not doing it for the fame, they're completely lying.
That's bullshit.
It is complete bollocks.
Of course it is. How has life changed for you since becoming a dad?
It has changed a lot, but in just the best way. So whether you're on your commute, you're at work, taking your break, jump in. This is Status Update.
Hello. Welcome back to Status Update. Thanks again for tuning in. Whether you're on your commute, you're at work, you're at your desk, you can listen to this podcast while you're working. It is technically a work podcast, as we like to think. You may have noticed I am not Stevie Johnson. Bit of a change of pace to the intros today. I am the co-host of Status Update, Jake Crabb, marketing manager at Disrupt. We're doing things a little bit differently today. We've got Stevie Johnson in the hot seat. Hello, Stevie. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Jake. I'm nervous. I don't know what to expect over the next half an hour, 40 minutes.
Well, I mean, this is the 7th episode we've done now, and obviously every episode up to now we've both kind of been in the process involved in getting ready for the podcast. You haven't had much involvement in that for today. I'm looking forward to it, to be honest. I found it a bit difficult prepping for today because obviously I've known you for a year and a half now. Mm-hmm. I feel like I know you quite well, but I was trying to write questions as if I didn't know you to kind of get the most out of it for both for myself and for the listeners. So today could go one of two ways. It could be a really interesting kind of groundbreaking conversation between the both of us, or it would just be rehashing conversations we've had many times
I think it'll be groundbreaking. I'm definitely positive about it.
I hope it will be. Now, we don't really need to break the ice, but I feel like it is tradition on this podcast to ask the same question, which is about the cringy status. Now, you've already given us a few cringy statuses before, but I have a feeling deep down somewhere you've been holding one or two back, which you are fully aware of, and I would like to know what they are.
How many have I given over the course of this? Was it just the one with Rob?
We've heard about Stevie Johnson's styling his hair to perfection.
Is that the only one we've heard?
Listeners may remember that from episode 1 with Rob Mayhew.
I think
that might even be the only one.
Because I do have another one that springs to mind at a similar time when I was at school, which I haven't mentioned yet. And that was Stevie is, because it was when all statuses proceeded with is. Yeah. Stevie is looking forward to the pizza, beer, football, and the banter.
Oh, nice.
And this again was at boarding school. Obviously it was something that we used to do to whittle away the time.
Yeah.
It was update our status quite frequently.
Yeah.
And that was going to my tutor's house that evening because I think England were playing in the football and he was getting pizzas in for us and we were 18 so we could have a beer. So it was probably a very exciting night for me, but the status itself was incredibly cringe that went with it.
Yeah. But listen, that was back in a time where I think that would have been cool.
Yeah.
I seem to remember. It's fine.
I
mate.
like you.
Do you know? I like you too. We should start a podcast together. Up till now, I've actually been able to avoid sharing any of my cringy status updates, but as this is the kind of bonus episode, the wrap up to volume 1, I feel like I should share something.
Do you want me to count you in for it? So you're like the guest.
Go on, count me in.
Jake, something that we ask all of our guests when they are sat in this room is whether they can look back and recount a status that they made earlier on in life that they look back on now and they cringe.
Yes, I can. And there is a lot. There's several. I actually know what my first ever Facebook status was, and it was at the park with all my mates, but the words were spelled, so with was spelled like W-I-V.
The worst.
My was spelled M-I-I.
Just hang on. My was that you made into a 3-letter word, even though it's a 2-letter word normally.
Because we were cool kids.
Yeah, but wasn't the whole point to shorten the words and you made my a longer
Not in
word?
my town, friends. Not in my town. And then I used to also like live status update about the X Factor. back in like 2008, 2009. So that was always fun. But anyway, that was fun. I enjoyed doing that. I've been eagerly waiting to share my cringy status updates throughout every
that
episode.
Was cringy. That could be the cringiest out of all of them.
Yeah,
or maybe mine.
Probably is. Yeah, styling your hair to perfection is a pretty cringe thing to put on Facebook. As you can tell, I don't have much chance.
So
to
good to relive
watching. Anyway, we've spoken about this several times on the pod before. You've got a background as a reality TV star, obviously, from your time on Made in Chelsea. I wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit today. Not so much talking about your time on the show, but more how life was for you after you'd left, the direction you took, how you ended up as the leader of a digital influencer marketing agency. So I guess my first question is, when you left the show, did you have any idea of where your life was headed when you left? Did you know that you wanted to go into marketing? Did you have a career lined up?
It's a good question. It's definitely, I speak a lot about my unique journey to, from TV to where I am today, but it's rare for me to actually specify exactly what was going on, when I did leave the show. And I'd done the show for 3 years. We'd been incredibly successful. We'd won a BAFTA. I'd had the time of my life. It had been my early to mid 20s. Loved every single minute of it. But in all honesty, after 3 years of doing it, I really missed routine in my life. It sounds strange, but it became less fun waking up on a Tuesday morning and not having to do anything until like 3 o'clock. And then I would maybe go and film for a couple of hours, and I might have to go and do a PA in like Wolverhampton that night. But it was a lot of fun for a certain amount of time. But then it got to a stage where I knew that there wasn't enough longevity in it for me. So when I left the show, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. There wasn't a job lined up. I wanted to try and stay in television more from a kind of behind the scenes role. So I wanted to get into production. Actually, my dream was to write for TV.
Really?
Yeah. So to create sitcoms.
Was it really?
Yeah.
See, I never knew that.
I actually wrote a pilot with Francis Bull.
Did you? What was it about? What was it called?
It was called Schoolhouse, and it was basically set in a boys' boarding school.
Okay.
And it was very funny. We never really got anywhere with it. We put in a lot of work and effort into it, but didn't really take it anywhere. Francis, if you're listening, let's fire it back up.
Absolutely.
So I knew that I wanted to try and stay in TV. If I could stay in front of the camera, great. You can't really transition from being a reality TV star into acting. It's also very difficult nowadays to transition into becoming a presenter. Some people have done it very well, but I would say that's 1 or 2%, as opposed to the majority of people. Also, why would TV companies choose you to front and present their show when there are probably far more talented presenters that have been working on it since they were teenagers?
Studied it, waiting in the wings sort of thing.
So I knew it was always going to be a challenge to stay in the public eye and to even stay in television. So I dabbled in that a little bit. I could never really go back into banking. I was in banking before I was on Made in Chelsea.
Yeah.
So I did find myself at quite a significant crossroad in my life where all of a sudden the income that I was earning from being on TV had stopped, and I basically didn't have a plan. So what was interesting was, at the time, social media had really kind of kicked off. I had a ton of followers on Twitter, a ton of followers on Instagram, hundreds of thousands of followers, and I'd started to work with certain brands in it, and the influencer marketing industry had been born. And I knew that I could use my background through my education and getting a degree in business and marketing, and what I've been doing in social media whilst I've been on the show, in order to drive a new career that probably hadn't existed a few years previously.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, to be honest, that's what I was going to ask you next was, do you think that your time on the show put you on the path to becoming like a voice in the influencer marketing industry? Obviously, as you say, at the time you left the show, you would have joined the industry at its infancy. It's a very new part of the digital marketing landscape.
Yeah.
So I guess that your time on the show, you were fortunate enough to be able to get in kind of from the ground up.
Being on the show closed a lot of doors for me, but it also opened up some that weren't previously open. And I got lucky in the sense, what do they say? That luck is when opportunity meets preparation.
Yeah.
Social media had taken off at such a level when I was on the show that I was able to ride that wave and then forge a career out of it afterwards. As you mentioned, Jake, influencer marketing as an industry was in its infancy when I first got into it. I honestly believe for the first 1 or 2 years that I was in it, I was probably one of the most knowledgeable people on influencer marketing in the UK. obviously over time it's become far more saturated. There are tons of people in it. The industry's completely boomed and it's amazing. I don't know whether I can hold claim to that anymore, but I do believe for a while that there were very few people that knew as much about the industry as I did.
You were top dog.
One of the, I like to think, yeah.
You're top dog. So just going back to when you said, obviously, you'd left the show, you didn't have a job, you didn't have that income coming in from being on the show, and obviously, inevitably, it moved on without you. New series came, new people joined, and it's now however many years later, it's probably a different beast to what it was when you were on it.
I think I left the show. I started the show 11 years ago, so I must have left it 8 years ago. Yeah.
So since then, it's as I say, the type of people that are on there has probably completely changed. When you left, did you feel lost? Were you excited at the prospects of what was coming in the future? Did you feel relieved in any way? I mean, what was your emotions going like when you left the show?
It was probably a little bit of everything. If I take my mind back to that time, I think there was a lot of relief not having to do the show anymore. When you're on the show, it's almost like being back at school in the sense that you have to play by the rules, and you're being because you've told me in the past when we spoke about it that you were kind of called upon as and when. Yeah.
And if you wanted to be on the show, you had to go.
Yeah, I had to. I remember speaking to, it was one of our new series producers, so a senior person on the final series that I was involved in. And I was less involved towards the end of my tenure on Made in Chelsea because I had a relationship that was off camera. Producers didn't really like that. They wanted me to be dating on camera because, it is all real. And I remember my brother was getting married in Australia. And I flew out there for 2 weeks. I was best man at his wedding. And it was during one of the series that we were filming. And it was at a stage where I was filming very rarely. And I was like, it's not really going to be a problem for me to go away. And I had a call from a senior producer that said to me, I've just caught wind that you're going to Australia for a couple of weeks. And I was like, yeah, my brother's getting married.
Yeah, obviously.
And I've also spoken to you guys about it. I've got the sign off. And they were like, well, 2 weeks is quite a long time to go. And I was like, well, it's not like I'm going to Ireland. Yeah. I'm going to Australia,
it's not
family
a 2-hour
wedding.
flight, is it?
I want to be able to enjoy myself. And they're like, well, what happens, what happens if we need you for filming? And I was like, well, to be honest, you've hardly needed me for filming for the last 2 months. So I presume it's not going to happen. And if you really need me for filming, give me a call and I'll see what I can do. Obviously, no call came. They just wanted to exert some of that pressure, which I want to clarify. I completely understand when you're making a reality TV show. So whilst there were frustrations for me being at that age and stage in my life, I completely get why it's produced and created the way that it is. And you can see the success off the back of it. I got to a stage 3 years on where I didn't want that anymore in my life. I wanted the freedom to do what I wanted to do and so on and so forth. So it came to quite a natural end. So I definitely felt that relief. I probably did feel excited because I didn't know what the future held for me, but it was definitely fairly daunting. A couple of difficult conversations that I had to have with myself and other people in my life as to what was next.
Yeah. I think anyone listening would be able to kind of sympathise with the fact that when you start that type of experience of being on a show like that, which was very popular by the time you joined, even on series 3 or 4, felt like the best thing in the world. But again, after 3 years of pretty much not being in control of your own schedule, your own life, I think anyone would have enough. Yeah,
it's definitely it's a double-edged sword, and one that you kind of have to embrace. And I've got to say, like 99% of the time, I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
It just got to a stage after 3 years where I was like, I'd matured a lot in myself. I wanted new things for my life, and it was the right time for me to move on and build my own career and set my own foundation for what life has in store for me.
Yeah. So what do you miss most then about being a reality? Yeah. Let me start that again. What do you miss most about being a reality TV star, if anything?
Oh, there's definitely plenty I miss.
Yeah.
There's a really good question, and I can give you a censored version of it, which would maybe make me look good.
Yeah.
Or I can give you like a truthful and honest thing. I miss the attention.
Yeah.
I do. We had a really nice level of fame when I was on it, so that it was never too hectic that you couldn't go out or that you were papped everywhere that you went. But a nice level of people coming up, recognitions, plenty of selfies, and people wanting to get to know you and be friends with you, and that was amazing most of the time.
Yeah.
It could be annoying sometimes, but most of the time it was amazing. And I do miss that. I think everyone likes a bit of that in their life. And also, one thing I will say, if anyone says to you when they go on reality TV that they're not doing it for the fame, they're completely lying.
That's bullshit.
It is complete bollocks.
Of course it is.
And I've heard people say that before.
Of course, that's bullshit. Yeah.
So the only reason why you do it at the time.
Yeah.
So that's something that I do miss. But ultimately, there's so much more that I've been able to achieve in life that I don't think I'd be where I was if I hadn't left at the stage that I did. So I'd never ever look back and regret as to when I left.
Yeah.
I look back on it and think my life wouldn't have turned out the way that it has now if I'd stayed on it any longer.
Managing director at Disrupt Marketing for 2+ years now.
Almost 3.
Almost 3 years.
I think when this comes out, it'll be about 3 years.
Be about 3 years. So since you joined the agency, I mean, has developed quite a lot from what it was when you first started. I think it was you, 2 people to begin with.
One other.
You and one other.
Yeah.
And now we obviously have the team that we do now who are doing some massive things in the industry. What are some of the lessons that you yourself have learned so far as being an agency leader in the influence marketing industry?
I'll give you one good and one bad response now to that,
to
that question. One of the good things that I've learned in a great way, is the importance of hiring well. We've got a team around us that thankfully loves what they do, and they love the work that they're doing for our clients. But ultimately, when you're building out a team or building an agency, there are so many different hats you have to wear as an agency leader at the start. But the sooner that you realize that you can hire people that are better at you in certain roles, then the more that you're going to allow the agency to flourish. And that was something that, over time, I needed to take a bit more of a step back and let other people take certain responsibility, which we've been able to do. But as a result, our efficiency as an agency and the results and the way we've been able to grow have been down to just as much the team that we've got in place as it is me. So a key learning for me very quickly that has been around hiring well. Something that we learned the hard way is ensuring that we're working with clients that have a similar or shared ethos to what we have.
Okay.
And without going into details or naming names with certain clients, but that can be very damaging for morale within the agency.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you want people to work on the types of projects that they're interested in and they're going to be invested in. That is not always possible. And I think anyone that's worked in an agency knows that. There's going to be certain clients that are more of a struggle and you maybe have less interest in, but ultimately you need to do the right amount of work. Where it can become damaging is if the ethos of a specific company is completely misaligned to our values as an agency, and that can really impact people when they're coming into work and doing their best work.
Yeah.
And when you're growing an agency, obviously the most important thing initially is revenue and making sure that you're generating that revenue and clients are signing on and you're doing great work for them. And so you view that as something that's vital, and the revenue becomes more important than actually the work that you're doing. And I'm not afraid to say that there were times, especially at the start, where it was a really big brand or a great client name, a good logo for us to have, and it really impacted the team 12 months down the line because they weren't doing the work that they wanted to do or their best work.
Yeah.
And so then you have to make certain difficult decisions. And that's something that we learnt the hard way. Those, if I've answered your question properly, are the 2 kind of key learnings that I've had as part of
Absolutely.
This journey.
Yeah, no, I think your positive takeaway about hiring people well and hiring into the team who can do certain aspects of your job or the job better than you can is obviously a seriously strong point, and I think one that a lot of marketers who are listening to this will probably agree with. Coming in at the stage that you did when it was you and one other person, I imagine it would have been quite difficult to kind of give up those roles, because I know that personally I'm a bit of a control freak. And when I have to put a job into the hands of someone else to do, I do find it quite difficult to kind of either give up creative control or I always have trust in people to do it, but I find it quite difficult to pass it on to someone. Did you find that at all when you, say, passing on certain responsibilities to people in the team, or was it a relief?
No, I definitely found it very challenging.
Yeah. And
the reason being, because for so long, and still to an extent this day, I'm very much the face of Disrupt, face of the agency. And all of the work that we were doing, the way that we were bringing in new business or the way that we were executing on campaigns, the way we were positioning ourselves out there in our marketing collateral, that all came back to, or was all related to me. And when I had to hand that over or certain tasks over to other people, I definitely found it challenging. I like to think I was quite good at it. Internally, I found it challenging. It'll be interesting if you speak to maybe other people in the agency, whether they say a little bit differently. But it was something that I would suggest to anyone listening that's going through something similar is you just almost you have to let go, because ultimately then it frees up your time to focus on growing the business, working on the business rather than in the business. But it also ensures that the people that are taking on these tasks and these jobs are allowed to flourish and grow themselves.
So you've seen both sides of the coin, right? Which, other people in the industry, I think you've got quite a unique stance.
My unique creative journey is born out of my unique creative experience.
There we go. But I think that gives Disrupt a bit of an edge.
I think so.
Because you have seen both sides of the influencer marketing coin, which naturally leads me to the question, which side do you prefer? Did you prefer being an influencer, or is agency life the life for you?
Oh my gosh, that is a tough question. I've got to think about that one. I think I'm much better working in an agency and as an agency leader than I am as an influencer.
Okay.
I think, thankfully, I can still do both.
Yeah.
If you're asking me if I'm sat here now and I could create content for the rest of my life, I think that would be a pretty nice life. I'd probably, for me personally, would need more around the... it's hard to answer this.
Okay, well, let me caveat that question then by something that you've just said there, which is, since you left Made in Chelsea and you were the influencer to where you are now, the world of social, as it always does, has developed a lot. Yes. New platforms have emerged. There's been millions of trends probably in that time.
RIP Twitter.
RIP Twitter. So the social landscape, and obviously while it's still something you're heavily involved in, and like we like to call ourselves social natives, if you were to go back into being a full-time influencer, do you think you'd have the knowledge to be able to create content as much or to the same standard as the talent that we work with?
To an extent, no.
Yeah.
I believe... And this is interesting because these are things that I'm going to start talking a little bit more about. And I'm talking at Web Summit later in the year, and this is one of the topics that I am going to cover, is all around charisma versus creativity. And I like to think the charisma side of things I had, I gave a pretty good job at doing when I was an influencer, when I was in Chelsea. And back in the day, it was very easy to become an influencer because you were on a TV show, or, you were a good-looking person, or you had a bit of something about you. Whereas nowadays, creativity has to underpin all of that success for influencers. The cream is rising to the top, as they would say. And if you don't have that creative angle, that creative spark, you're going to get left behind. There's another caveat to that where you can start speaking about, driving an audience to take action and so on. But ultimately, creativity is the core component for influencers nowadays, or creators as we should call them. And I like to think of myself as a creative person. Do I have the ability to create the types of short form video and the creative concepts that other people can do out there? The answer is no. If I wasn't running an agency 5 days a week and looking after a child on the weekends and at night and during the week when I'm working from home, but anyway, then I could maybe put in more effort into doing it if I was a full-time influencer, but I'm not.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's not like you say. People don't just become famous now on the weight of being on a television show. Definitely happens. Love Island, people on Love Island, all those reality TV shows definitely still, gain large audiences and get brand deals and all that kind of stuff. But you're right in what you say is that they have to have that. They need to be able to make content creatively. And if they don't, they get left behind, unfortunately. So in terms of the agency, as I said, we've grown quite a lot from when I started. The things we're doing in the industry, the clients we have, the people we're talking to, the relationships we have, it's all come on leaps and bounds. Where do you see us heading?
I see us continuing to go from strength to strength. For those of you that are listening out here that don't know a huge amount about Disrupt, we are an influencer marketing and social media agency. We're very good at what we do. One of the things that I've really liked over the past few years is how we've been able to diversify into certain other services. So like our production capabilities and what we're doing for certain clients there has been very cool to see. I would like to see us continue to diversify to an extent. I think there's a lot of exciting things happening in the space. We can touch on things like AI. I think maybe we'll speak a little bit later as to what we think the actual future of things are going to be.
Yeah.
I want us to keep growing the way we've been able to grow over the last 3 years. Organically.
Yeah.
I'm not the most patient person when it comes to seeing success in business, and I can sit down and look at the last 3 years and be like, wow, look at how far we've come, and it's been really, really impressive. But I'm focusing on the next 3 years and seeing how we can not just double but triple in size again. And I want us to be able to have a seat at the big table, not just with the other influencer marketing agencies out there, but the big social and creative agencies as well. And I think that's where we're heading.
Bit of a change of pace.
Ooh.
We are officially podcast hosts now.
We are officially podcast hosts.
We are podcast hosts now. How have you felt the process of creating the status update has gone so far?
I think it's been amazing. It's been so enjoyable. It's been so nice to work on something outside of the regular day-to-day of the agency. And I've loved doing it with you.
Thank you.
I think you've been...
I've also enjoyed doing it with yourself.
So I found the whole process incredibly enjoyable. I would say, you know me, before we start recording anything, even today, I get very nervous before we sit down and do these things. And I don't think that'll ever change. But I haven't found it a stressful process. I think we've had a lot of fun doing it. I think we've had a load of incredible guests, and we've heard some really fantastic stories, but also a lot of great insight that we've been able to share to our listeners. So all in all, I've loved it. Have you felt the same?
I have. I mean, it's been a long process. I mean, looking back, I pitched the idea of a podcast in my interview, which was a year and a half plus ago. But yeah, I have loved it. It's been a change of pace from obviously my day to day.
You're like, I'm falling behind in everything else I need to do.
Like my actual work has like gone to shit. Like this has been my baby for the last however many months. But I have loved the process. It's like you say, it's not been stressful, because areas that should have been stressful have been I've still enjoyed finding the solutions to things. And you know, it's given me a chance to meet people I probably wouldn't have been able to meet
definitely
otherwise. I know that I was certainly surprised by the caliber of guests that we were able to get onto the pod for our first volume or season, if you want to call it that. Did that surprise you?
It didn't surprise me, only because, and we said this right from the very start, if we were going to do a podcast, we want to do it right. I didn't want to rush it and get people on that maybe weren't super interesting and we were doing it for the sake of doing it or for the sake of some video content. I wanted us to be able to speak to people that had interesting backstories, but more so than that, could speak about the industry that we find ourselves in today and what that future looks like, and really drive insight to our listeners. We could sit here and talk to someone interesting and hear all about their backstory, and we could be like every other podcast that's out there. I think what we've done really well, or try to do at least, and I hope listeners at home, and I hope you, the listener, agrees with this, is we've tried to drive a lot of value out of it and ensure that people can learn something by listening to it. So it's been amazing to see the types of people that we've been able to get on. I don't think I would have been happy putting out a podcast unless we were getting the right people that we wanted to for it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more, to be honest. Thinking about the people that we have had on, and it does blow my mind that we were able to get those. Obviously, not so much my connections, being a kind of unknown in the industry, but it's handy having yourself and the group to kind of do the outreach. Have any moments particularly stood out to you that you thought that's a good piece of content, or that's a...
I love speaking to Amy about embracing your weird. Look, I've loved every single guest. For me, I came out of the podcast that we did with Miss Anne, and I was like, I can't wait to listen to that.
Yeah.
Partly because of the way that Miss Anne speaks is amazing, but also, his obviously incredibly unique story, but the way that he's looking at Web3 and how that's going to impact culture and society as a result of it, and what we can be doing to embrace more of that a little bit, which maybe some people have been scared to do. I think for me, that was a big moment where I was like, okay, we've got an incredible podcast here.
Yeah, I agree. I think, don't get me wrong, I've been nervous for every episode.
I know who you're going to say, but keep going.
Well, I was incredibly nervous for Rob Mayhew.
Yeah.
Because obviously it was the first episode, bar a pilot. It was the first episode that we recorded, and it was kind of like it was real then. And when it became real, it was like, shit, like we need to smash this. Lovely guy, made me feel kind of like a mate as soon as he walked through the door. And as soon as I sat on the sofa, we were off to the races. It was great. Like you, I was incredibly nervous before Miss Anne, probably because of who he is and who he's worked with, and the fact that he's done it all in the last 5 years. It impresses me so much that I think it made me I was like, wow, we need to nail this for the sake of who he is. But, you know, it's been the same for every guest. I loved our conversation with Jamie, Dom and Amy. I've loved every episode. You've entered a new phase in your life. Parenthood.
I have.
How has life changed for you since becoming a dad?
It has changed a lot, but in just the best way.
Yeah.
In the best way.
Sleepless nights.
But you know what? That's fine.
Yeah.
For 11 months, he didn't really sleep that well, or sleep through, I should say. And you kind of just crack on with it. You find a different gear as a parent. And don't get me wrong, you know, I would like to sleep through the night. But at the same time, when you're getting up and it's to look after your little one and to help them out, and you wake up in the morning and you're tired and they're desperate to see you, it's incredible. I struggle to put into words what that feeling's like. Life's changed, but I can't believe life wasn't like this beforehand. I also believe I've got a purpose in life that I didn't have previously. Mm-hmm. And by saying that, I'm not saying that people don't have children, haven't got the same purpose in life. I'm saying for me personally, the purpose that I now feel every single day is at a completely different scale to what I had before, and that it makes me very proud.
Yeah.
And it makes me very content in life. People often talk about things like Sunday blues, and I've never been a massive sufferer of Sunday blues in the past, partly because I've enjoyed the work that I've been doing. But I haven't had a single time on a Sunday evening or Sunday afternoon where I've been like, oh God, this week, or I'm going to work tomorrow, or anything like that. Because for me, every single day now with my son is a gift. Yeah. And I look forward to it in the morning. I wake up in the morning, it doesn't matter if it's Monday or if it's Friday or if it's Saturday, whatever it is, and I see him and I get my time with him before I need to go to the office or whatever, and that makes life complete for me.
Mate, that's such a nice answer. That's such a nice answer. You've mentioned previously, Stevie, in previous episodes, that, you know, you have this large social media audience that's kind of just sitting there
dormant.
You don't really take advantage of the fact that you do have a big following on social media. Do you think as parent life continues to evolve, your son gets older, you might enter the realms of kind of creating that family style content, maybe look for a few brand collaborations in that space? Or is it not something that you're interested in at all?
I don't know the honest answer to that. I think at this moment in time, he's so young, and you spend the first year of a baby's life just, you know, looking after them, and every waking hour that you've got, ensuring that they're okay. For me personally, at the moment, I don't see a journey that I take that leads me down that route, to becoming a content creator in the parenting space.
Which I think people would find surprising.
Yeah.
Given the position that you're in the industry that you're in, with the following that you have, I do think people would find it surprising that you don't see that path.
It's an oxymoron. I am still a very private person.
Wait, what did you call me?
I'm still a very private person. And this is, I mean, for another time, but this is what hindered me when I first joined Made in Chelsea.
Yeah.
You know, after 3 years, I knew exactly how to play the game, and, you know, very popular character, amazing. It hindered me at the start. Nowadays, if you look at it, I'm not willing or desperate enough to show that side of my life to absolutely everyone out there. And again, I want to caveat, I've got nothing against people that do want to do that. No. I've got nothing against that. But for me personally, my wife and my son at this stage, we like those kind of the moments being for the three of us and for our family, and not necessarily sharing that. That might change over time as my son grows up, if we have more kids, who knows. But for now, I think we're happy with how...
Just cherishing the privacy.
Yeah.
That's nice. A question that we've asked everyone on the podcast so far is about the future of the digital landscape. Any trends that our guests think we're likely to see emerging, unless you're Amy Keane, in which case trends are bullshit. What big trends do you think we see coming in our industry in the next 12 months?
The hot topic at the moment, obviously, is around AI. AI is going to be the biggest change to our society since the smartphone. And before that, the internet. And I don't think there's been anything in my life that will compete with that. So I'll put AI making that the biggest change to society now. if you look at the way that we work, it's going to really impact that for the better, I believe.
Already is, I'd say.
It already is. It's going to enhance the way that we work, especially if people are embracing it. I read a study, I can't remember the exact name of it, but it was saying how 49% of people now are already using AI in their influencer marketing campaigns.
So half already.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, a lot of people will be like, oh, hang on, how is that working? Well, firstly, any search platform you're using through influencer search, that is AI. So 49% actually seems like quite a small number for our industry. It should be more. But a lot of these tech platforms are now integrating the likes of ChatGPT and other language models as well, which is going to absolutely revolutionize the way that we speak to talent and influencers and outreach to them. If you look at things like creative ideation and how we're writing briefs, all of these things are going to cut the time that we can do things in half. Team might kill me for saying that, but it's going to really push the boundaries for what is capable and the speed that we can do things for us in any industry. But I'm looking at it from an influencer marketing perspective, which I find really exciting. So I think the quicker that we can all look at embracing that, the better it's going to be. I think there's going to be a big rise in the virtual influencers and the use of deep fakes that we're seeing. I think there's a lot more regulation that needs to be put in place around some of that.
Absolutely.
But that's something that you could say it's been trending a little bit for a few years, but the uptake now is really going to start to take off. As an agency ourselves, we need to ensure that we can position ourselves the right way. I personally, when I look at us at Disrupt, I'm trying to change the way that brands view the influencer marketing agency. We're at such a crux in the road at the moment, whereby for so long influencer marketing has been this incredible brand awareness king, and now there's all this conversation. Is it about conversions? Is it performance? Is that the way it's going? Yes, to an extent, and now AI is coming in and completely ripping things up from another aspect. So it's tricky and it's challenging being who we are, but if we want to stay fresh and ensure that the best brands keep coming back to us, we need to make sure that we've got it down.
It's been great to sit down and just kind of do this bonus episode. It's something that I know that both you and I were excited about doing kind of even before we recorded episode 1 as a bit of a wrap up to the series. Thank you very much for sitting down with me today, mate.
Thank you, Jake. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, listeners. I'm going to take you through to me for some more sign-offs.
Great.
Cool. We're out. Guys, thank you so much for updating your status with us today. If you've enjoyed today's episode of Status Update, why not follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you found today's discussion insightful, share it with your friends or colleagues to keep them in the loop. Once again, thanks for stopping by for this episode of Status Update. We'll see you in the next one.